What if history had taken a different turn? Imagine a world where the 13 colonies never united as one nation. Picture a reality where the American Revolution, that beacon of liberty, had flickered and died. This is not our timeline, but a tantalizing what if that allows us to explore the profound impact of the American Revolution. By peering into this alternate past, we can better understand the very fabric of our present. The idea of an America that never was might seem strange, even unsettling. Yet it serves as a powerful reminder of the contingent nature of history. It underscores the reality that the world we know, the United States we often take for granted, was not inevitable. It was shaped by the struggles and triumphs of those who came before us. It is in this spirit of exploration, of understanding the forces that have shaped our world, that we embark on this journey into an alternate past. Join me as we delve into a world where the American Revolution failed, and the United States, as we know it, never came to be. In this alternate 1783, the Treaty of Paris is signed, but the ink dries on a very different future than the one we know. Instead of birthing a new nation, the agreement cements the American colonies' place within the British Empire, their hopes for independence dashed at the negotiating table. The outcome is dramatic and deeply felt. The Union Jack continues to flutter above colonial cities, a daily reminder of the Crown's enduring authority. News of the treaty spreads quickly, and a heavy silence settles over the towns and villages. The colonists, who once dreamed of liberty, now gather in public squares, their faces marked by disappointment and resignation. British redcoats march through the streets, their presence a constant symbol of imperial power. Colonial buildings, once adorned with homemade banners of rebellion, now display British flags once more. The American colonies remain firmly under British control, their aspirations for self-governance put on indefinite hold. The dream of independence is extinguished, replaced by a grudging acceptance of continued colonial rule. Lanterns that once burned with hope are snuffed out, and homemade flags are quietly lowered, folded, and hidden away. The spirit of revolution is forced underground, replaced by a cautious, uneasy peace. The colonists, weary from years of war and burdened by the crushing debt incurred defending their interests, lay down their arms. Militiamen return home, stacking their muskets in barns and attics, uncertain if they will ever need them again. Families gather around wooden tables, counting their remaining coins, wondering how they will pay the new taxes sure to come from London. Imagine the bustling streets of Boston, New York, and Philadelphia, not as vibrant centers of a new nation, but as important, yet ultimately subordinate cities within a vast British Empire. British ships crowd the harbors, unloading goods and soldiers alike. The marketplaces are filled with the sounds of commerce, but also the ever-present reminder of British oversight. The dynamics of power remain starkly different. British officials address the townspeople, their words carefully chosen, their authority unquestioned. Colonial leaders, once bold voices for independence, now stand apart, their influence diminished, their ambitions checked by the ever-watchful eyes of the Crown. The colonists, while perhaps granted a degree of autonomy in local matters, lack the self-determination that defines the American spirit. Every decision, every law is subject to approval by distant British authorities. The sense of agency that once fueled revolution is replaced by uncertainty and frustration. The political landscape of this British North America is vastly different. The colonies are reorganized, their borders redrawn to better suit imperial interests. New administrative offices are established, and colonial governments are restructured to ensure loyalty to the Crown. Without the Articles of Confederation or the subsequent Constitution, the colonies likely operate under a modified version of British common law and parliamentary rule. Legal disputes are settled in British courts, and colonial assemblies are limited in their power, always subject to the final word from London. The fiery rhetoric of revolution is replaced by the measured debates of colonial assemblies, forever under the watchful eye of the Crown. The spirit of passionate oratory is tempered by the knowledge that true power lies elsewhere, and dissent is carefully monitored. Life under continued British rule would have had profound and far-reaching consequences for the everyday lives of the colonists. British soldiers patrol the markets, and their presence a constant reminder of authority. Families dine beneath portraits of the British monarch, and craftspeople work under the gaze of redcoats, their livelihoods tied to the whims of imperial policy. From the grand halls of government to the bustling marketplaces, the presence of the crown would have been an undeniable force, shaping the social, political and economic fabric of this alternate North America. The echoes of what might have been a nation built on liberty and self-rule linger in the hearts of the colonists. But the reality is a world where British authority is absolute and the American dream remains just out of reach. Without the westward surge fueled by manifest destiny, the map of North America takes on a drastically different shape. The familiar outlines of the United States, stretching from the Atlantic to the Pacific, never materialize. Instead, the continent remains a mosaic of competing interests, cultures and ambitions, each vying for influence and survival. The idea of a single unified nation dominating the continent is replaced by a patchwork of territories, each with its own story and destiny. The proclamation of 1763, which restricted westward expansion beyond the Appalachian Mountains, remains in effect, serving as a constant source of tension between the Crown and its colonial subjects. Colonists eager for new land and opportunity find themselves hemmed in by royal decree, their ambitions stifled by distant rulers. The mountains become not just a physical barrier, but a symbol of the limits imposed on colonial dreams. The vast territories west of the Mississippi, envisioned as the American heartland in our timeline, remain largely under the control of Native American tribes and the dwindling influence of New Spain. These lands, rich in resources and history, are shaped by the traditions and alliances of indigenous nations who continue to govern their ancestral homelands. Spanish missions and forts dot the landscape, but their reach is limited, challenged by both native resistance and the ambitions of rival European powers. Imagine a North America where the borders are redrawn, not along the familiar lines of states and provinces, but reflecting the enduring power of indigenous nations and the reach of European empires. The continent is a living tapestry, its boundaries shifting with every treaty, alliance, and conflict. The Iroquois Confederacy, the Comanche Empire, and the powerful nations of the Pacific Northwest all play pivotal roles in shaping the destiny of the land. The Louisiana Purchase, a pivotal moment in American expansion, never occurs. The dream of doubling the size of a young nation with a single stroke of a pen is left unfulfilled. Instead, the vast interior of the continent remains a battleground for influence, with France holding on to its claims and other European powers eyeing the territory with envy and suspicion. The vast territory, stretching from the Mississippi River to the Rocky Mountains, remains under French control, or perhaps becomes a bargaining chip in the complex geopolitical games played by European powers. The French, Spanish, British, and even Russian interests all intersect here, creating a volatile mix of diplomacy, trade, and occasional conflict. The fate of these lands is uncertain, their future shaped by the ever-shifting alliances and rivalries of the Old World. The absence of westward expansion, a defining characteristic of American identity, has profound implications. The myth of the frontier, the idea of boundless opportunity and reinvention, never takes root in the same way. The original 13 colonies remain the heart of British America, their populations growing denser, their economies more intertwined with the Atlantic world than with the untamed interior. The clashes and conflicts that shaped the American West, the displacement of Native American tribes, and the rise of a frontier mentality all unfold differently, creating a vastly different narrative for the continent. Native nations retain far more autonomy and territory, their cultures and societies continuing to thrive and adapt. The stories of cowboys, gold rushes, and wagon trains become rare exceptions rather than the defining legends of a nation. This more fragmented North America, with its patchwork of empires, colonies, and indigenous nations, presents a stark contrast to the unified, continent-spanning nation that exists today. The continent is a stage for constant negotiation, cooperation, and conflict, with no single power able to claim dominance. Trade routes crisscross the land, languages and cultures intermingle, and the future remains uncertain, shaped by the ambitions of many rather than the will of one. The absence of a United States, with its insatiable appetite for territory and resources, creates a world where the balance of power remains in flux, where the fate of a continent hangs in the balance. In this alternate history, North America is a land of possibility and peril, its destiny shaped not by manifest destiny, but by the enduring struggle between peoples, empires, and the land itself. The question of slavery, a moral stain on the soul of a nation, takes on a different trajectory in this alternate timeline. Without the seismic shock of revolution to disrupt the established order, the fate of millions of enslaved people in North America would have been shaped by a different set of forces. Ones rooted in imperial politics, economic interests, and the slow churn of social change. The absence of a unifying revolutionary ideology means that the debate over slavery would have unfolded in a far more gradual and perhaps more complicated manner. Without the ideological fervor of the revolution, the institution of slavery might have persisted longer in a British North America. The colonies, still under the rule of the British Crown, would have continued to operate within the economic and legal frameworks established by the Empire. The southern colonies in particular would have remained deeply dependent on slave labor to fuel their vast plantations, producing tobacco, rice, and later cotton for the global market. The British Empire, while grappling with its own abolitionist movement, was deeply economically reliant on the transatlantic slave trade. British merchants and ship owners profited immensely from the trafficking of human beings, and the wealth generated by slave labor in the colonies flowed back to London, Liverpool, and Bristol. The economic entanglement between Britain and its American colonies would have made any move toward abolition a contentious and drawn-out process. The absence of a unified American voice against slavery, fueled by the principles enshrined in the Declaration of Independence, could have delayed the fight for abolition. Without the rallying cry that all men are created equal, there would have been less ideological ammunition for those seeking to challenge the institution. Instead, the debate would have been shaped by British legal traditions, parliamentary debates, and the slow evolution of public opinion on both sides of the Atlantic. The southern colonies, with their plantation economies deeply intertwined with slave labor, would have likely resisted any attempts by the Crown to dismantle the institution. Local elites, whose fortunes depended on the continued exploitation of enslaved people, would have lobbied fiercely against abolitionist measures. Tensions between colonial interests and imperial policy could have led to political standoffs or even sporadic unrest as planters sought to protect their way of life. However, the British Empire's own growing abolitionist movement, spearheaded by figures like William Wilberforce, would have exerted pressure on the Crown to address the issue of slavery in all its territories. The moral arguments of abolitionists, combined with the tireless activism of formerly enslaved people and their allies, would have slowly shifted the political landscape. Campaigns, petitions, and public rallies in Britain would have kept the issue in the public eye, making it increasingly difficult for the government to ignore the call for justice. This internal conflict between economic expediency and moral imperative would have played out on the streets of London and in the halls of Parliament, with the fate of millions hanging in the balance. Debates would have raged over the rights of property versus the rights of humanity, and the voices of abolitionists would have clashed with those of merchants and planters. The struggle would not have been confined to Britain alone. Colonial assemblies and local newspapers in North America would have echoed these arguments, reflecting the deep divisions within society. The abolition of slavery in the British Empire in 1833 serves as a potential turning point in this alternate timeline. The passage of the Slavery Abolition Act would have sent shockwaves through the colonies, forcing planters and colonial officials to confront a new reality. The process of emancipation would have been complex and fraught, with resistance from entrenched interests and uncertainty about the future of the freed population. While the path to emancipation might have been different, the moral force of the abolitionist movement, both within and beyond British North America, might have ultimately led to the dismantling of this inhumane institution, albeit through a different and perhaps more protracted struggle. The legacy of slavery would have continued to shape society for generations, but the eventual triumph of abolition would stand as a testament to the power of collective action and the enduring human quest for freedom and dignity.